Welcome to this week's episode of Rock and Roll Ghost Podcast. This week I'm talking to author, photographer, Beau Patrick Coulon, whose new book, Revel and Revolt, is out now. It's essentially, I mean, what would you call it? I mean, it's an old term, but would you call it a coffee table book?
Yeah, you could call it a coffee table book. It's a photo book. It's not one of the beefier coffee table books. You know, I think about some of those as being like almost the size of a coffee table.
Right.
This one's a little bit bigger than a typical trade paperback.
Yeah.
But so, it's a soft cover. It's a soft cover photo book. I think it's like 130 pages or 120 pages, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was sent a PDF of it, and like I said, I'm still going to buy the actual book, and I went through it a couple of times, and it's like 69 pages on a PDF. So, but they condense everything.
Right.
Well, first off, what prompted? Obviously, the book has a start of around 2016 in terms of it seems where you're mostly focused on the last from like around 2016 to before the pandemic, primarily, and you were finishing it up during the pandemic. Was it the political upheaval that primarily shifted you this way? Did you have the intention of doing the book, or were you doing the work and the book came out of that?
Yeah, kind of that last thing. The work included in the book spans a period of 8 years from 2013 to the beginning of 2021. But you're right where I think some of the essays kind of start right around 2016. Really kind of the election and 2015, 2016, where there was the Trump election and a lot of things changing in the country, a lot of political upheaval. But the reason why the book came out really is because of the pandemic. You know, I just sort of photograph things that I'm drawn to that I'm connected to, like things that are part of my life. So if I'm going to see a friend's band or going to check out a certain space, I'm photographing while I'm there. You know, it's kind of what I do. If I show up to support some demonstration, you know, I'm probably photographing while I'm there. And so during the shutdown that was a response to COVID, you know, I'm kind of in semi-isolation and I have time to pour through my archive, and I'm basically seeing all these images that I shot of the community here in Southern Louisiana, more specifically New Orleans, and really where people are coming together for me in my sort of communities and groups and stuff were you know, these unsanctioned Mardi Gras events, you know, not like the official big floats and parades kind of thing, but sort of like the parties that are happening off in the cut and, you know, big groups of friends coming together and then some of these like underground music shows and then a lot of protests because there were a lot of those things happening, you know, during this time period. But
yeah.
So I'm looking at these pictures while I'm kind of missing my community, you know, and missing my friends, you know, missing these activities, missing that feeling of being with a group of people. And I noticed, you know, a lot of aesthetic similarities and then, you know, I thought more about it and kind of realized like all these different communities and groups of people support each other in different ways. It's kind of like the same friends that I would run into at the punk show or the same friends that I would, you know, march with at a demonstration or party with at, you know, during Mardi Gras. You know, it was like, so I really was just feeling super grateful for my community. And then you know, in the absence of that community, really wanting to contribute something that maybe made people feel connected again. So, you know, that might not have happened if it weren't for the circumstance of having a lot of time off,
Right.
and then also being kind of pulled away and isolated. You know, because it made me value those things a little bit more. I'd already thought like, okay, well, I'll do a photo book at some point. I'd done photo zines. I'd included work in other people's photo books. Recently, there was a photo book out in that my friend Michael Rababi put out in LA called California Love, and he included some of my work from like, you know, around 2010 in that book, and that was really inspiring to have, you know, and that was like a bigger kind of coffee table book. You know, so I'd always intended to do my own work, but the fact that it was this book is what came out first is, yeah, sorry for the long-winded response.
Oh, no. Oh, it's perfect. I mean, I like I love long-winded here.
Okay, good. All right, cool, man.
The more long-winded, the better. It means I talk less. Because sometimes I get off on tangents. So, but you've been doing this for quite some time. You started you know, I know I read that you left home early. Had this big family. I'm guessing identity. Having your own identity in a family that big was probably hard to have, and searching for it was probably something that felt right to you, even though, for God's sake, I'm sure we're closer in age than I would think, that I would be scared to death of doing what you did as a teenager and uprooting myself like that. But there are some people that just have that gumption in them so that they can survive. But I have to imagine, you know, the details of your early life, especially. I mean, you lived in your car, you lived from place to place and stuff. And there was the part that got me the most was, and I don't know why this got me, but when were living in your car and you had everything in your car and your car was towed away and you didn't have any money to get it out. So you lost everything you had, including all this wellspring of photos that just, I don't know why that in particular tore up my heart, but it spoke to me very much, because it's like I can't even imagine being in that position and then still finding a way to have it be lower than that somehow, you know, and I don't mean low in terms of negative. I just mean that, you know, you're barely scraping by and the rug is literally pulled out from under you, but you persevered and you still have this kind of independent spirit that I really admire. And I'm not sure if there was a question there. See, this is what I'm talking about. I start talking and I don't know what I'm saying sometimes. But basically all of that has informed how you work, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate the sentiment and the acknowledgement. You know, I think a lot of people, when it comes to decision making or life choices, you know, they choose among the options that are available, you know, or not everyone feels like they have that many options. I certainly didn't. You know, I had like a few obvious choices and then, you know, a few. I guess what I'm saying is you might have made the same choices I made if you were in my circumstances at the time.
That's probably true.
Because those were the options, you know. It was I was in a bad situation. I could stay in that bad situation, or I could sort of like venture out on my own. And there's the big unknown, and maybe there's risks and dangers associated with that. But the risks and dangers associated with not doing that, to me were, you know, that was less of a viable choice. So, but yeah, when I was like really young, you know, things just really weren't working out. I think I was just going through a hard time kind of emotionally, like, you know, I think puberty is terrible for everyone, you know, the hormones and the changes but I was in a situation where I was going through a lot of rough stuff at a point in time, but also didn't really have the support of like really responsible parents. And so, you know, I kind of was on my own, and I could stay in a situation where like maybe, okay, I'm staying with my mom, or I'm living in a small town in Oklahoma, but like there's a certain amount of violence there, or there's a certain amount of, you know, trauma there. Or I can like go live with punks in an abandoned building, and like, yeah, we got to worry about the cops, but at least everyone, you know, at least there's support and there's community and there's a feeling of like we're all together.
Right.
You know, so yeah, those were the choices I made at the time. I think that, you know, I think you touched on something too, though. A lot of the reasons why I was drawn to photography is, you know, I felt like I was, you know, slipping through the cracks. I was like disappearing. I had a big family. I got 9 brothers and sisters. They're all half siblings. So, like my mom, for example, had 3 kids in her first marriage. My dad had 4 kids in his first marriage. You know, my mom's kids were with their dad. My dad's kids were with their mom. You know, so when my mom and dad came together, you know, I didn't really like grow up with these people. They were in the photo albums and they were talked about. And like later in life, I formed connections with a lot of my family. And my mom had 2 more kids after she split with my dad. But I grew up alone with my dad, and then bouncing back and forth where he would send me to live with my mom, but you know, her kids were living with their dads. So it was like I was either alone with my mom or alone with my dad for the most part. And you know, you go and you like look in like the family photo album, and there's just page after page of these other kids, and you're like, where am I in all this? You know, like literally, like kind of, you know, that's just one example where you're like, oh, I'm kind of left out of the picture. But when you find yourself without housing, or you find yourself like on the street, you know, and I was a street kid for most of my teens, you know, that you're really invisible. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could ask someone for the time of day and they'll just look right through you, you know, on the sidewalk. So like, you know, I think photography was a thing, you know, well, one, it's just fun, you know, like, hey, let's shoot a roll of film and roll the dice and, you know, go drop it off at the drugstore and pick up the prints, and maybe we got some magic in there, something cool, you know, something to like show up and share with your friends. And, but also it's like an artifact. It's like proof, you know, like, look, we were there, we had this fun time, and, you know, you know, we exist. So maybe on some level, you know, early on photography for me was like, had something to do with that. You know what I mean? I'd say now it's like, it's an obsession, you know, it's a habit and an obsession, and maybe there's some skill involved, but, you know, I think it's kind of like, it's almost like a numbers game, or like, or like, there's a saying that a lot of people use, or a phrase a lot of people use, you know, cast a wide net, you know? So like the more I shoot, you know, it's not like the more great images I have. But it's like, if I don't shoot 100 images, I'm not going to get those 2 good ones, you know?
Right.
So like I through time, you know, I'm at a place now where like I have a bit of an archive of different subjects and stuff like that. And really, yeah, I mean, all my life experience, it informs my practice, and the stuff that I shoot, it is all kind of like, you know, well, I do professional photo shoots too, where someone's like, I need headshots, you know, or like doing a campaign, or sometimes I'll work on a film where they need, you know, unit production stills, you know, behind the scenes stuff, or, you know, and I do those jobs because I'm proficient with a camera. I know how to operate, and I know how to get what's asked for. But as far as like when I pick up a camera and go out on my own, the things that I like to shoot are really just the things that I show up for in my daily life, you know.
Right. Right. Well, both are your art is basically your art, but one is more your creative vision. The other is your there somebody else's creative vision through your abilities, basically. And
Yeah.
I have to imagine that even though it's creative, it's not. You would probably do you oftentimes give feedback on shooting things like somebody says I want this, this, and this, and you go, well, how about this? So, do you do that a lot, or is it pretty rigid in terms of being hired for such things?
Well, I mean, I like them both. I love shooting my own personal work is
Yeah.
awesome. This photo book that I put out recently, Revel Revolt, is definitely personal. But I love working professionally as a photographer and collaborating with people and doing things that I wouldn't normally do. So if people want something that isn't something I would normally shoot, I love it. It's
Yeah.
a great way to experience something that I probably wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
And and usually when someone hires me, they look at my photography. They get a little bit of a sense of who I am,
Right.
and maybe they want some flavor of that in the work that I'm doing.
Gotcha.
I mean, there are other times, sure, I get jobs sometimes where they're like, "You're a photographer," and Kate sent us your email, so now we're hiring you, and they don't know anything about me,
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to shoot these corporate headshots now, and or I'm going to do this featurette for some some convention for medical supplies, like that. Obviously, like that doesn't have anything to do with who I am as an artist, but still, it's like you're practicing, you're using the tools, you're really like. I'm super grateful every time I get an opportunity to work doing what I love.
Yeah.
And I don't really like place emphasis on one or over the other. I'd be happy to do either for the rest of my life. But when I'm sharing photography, that like I'm putting stuff in my portfolio or on my website or online or something, it tends not to be the jobs. It tends to be the stuff I'm personally connected.
Right. And that makes sense. But I mean, it's got to be. It's still gratifying and it's probably great to just be able to work. I mean, quite frankly, how did you survive the past year? Did you get certain jobs, or were you just skating by on whatever unemployment, the little bit of checks the government gave, what have you? What was your situation the past year?
Yeah, a little bit of all that. I'd say about almost 5 years ago now, I joined the union down here in New Orleans for movies and TV shows and mostly like art department stuff. Not. I mean, every once in a while I'll get hired in the camera department, but I'm in this other union, sort of doing art department stuff, which is great, and I love it a lot, and it provides me with a stable livelihood. But the the way it is working on films is you're really busy for a month or two, and then you might have a month or two off.
Right.
And so, like, I've kind of learned over the years not to rely on any one thing because one of them might drop off. Things change, and so the movie industry completely dried up last March, and there was there were no shows filming, and so I wasn't getting any income off that. And I did work doing some photography stuff. I did this really strange photogrammetry job where basically I was using my camera to scan real life objects that were later placed in 3D environments for post-production, for video games.
Oh, okay.
For all kinds of things. But it was like, they need a fence, or they need a stoop, or they need a garbage can, or a light pole, or, an old building. You have to go and take thousands and thousands of pictures. They feed them into an algorithm. You have to shoot from like every angle, like kind of triangulate and literally scan the objects and then they appear in a 3D rendering, which they own. The post house owns that property and can sell it. Like, oh yeah, you need a house, a building for this video game. Well, here are the houses we have.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, so it was kind of
odd, but it seems odd to some degree, but it also makes sense.
It was odd. I was like, okay, I'm happy that I have this like random job right when this other, main source of income dried up. So I'm able to keep working, and it's also something I can do alone. So it's socially distant.
Yeah.
And everything's happening online. I'm just, transferring files. So I was really fortunate that I had that work for a little while, and then, but it didn't really, it wasn't really gratifying to my soul in the way that, working with a group or collaborating with others on photo shoots or film projects was. So also it was a lot of time involved in it, and mind numbing and technical. And then the weather here in the summer is really erratic, and it's something that you have to have like very specific lighting conditions for. So it kind of became a bit of a headache, and I wasn't able to do that throughout the entire pandemic or the entire shutdown. And but I was able to get on unemployment for a while, and I live really modestly. I'm married. I got married actually during the pandemic.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, my wife Jordan kind of came into my life a couple years ago, but we moved in with each other right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
And so we were able to, kind of share resources. Split the it made things much more economical. We could cook meals together. We could share the bills. We were both on unemployment for a good chunk of that time. And, I took out a small business loan at some point, racked up a little bit of credit card debt, but then towards the end of the year, towards the beginning of this year, the things started to crank up, and I've been just busy. I've been working pretty much nonstop since the beginning of the year.
Great.
Great. And so I'm kind of like, I've kind of recouped, and I feel like not everyone I know can claim, like I was really lucky. I got through that time period without any sort of like really, really significant mental or emotional crisis, and I didn't get evicted or displaced. I was able to, support myself and my wife, and then we were also able to show up for our community in other ways. I feel really fortunate and lucky.
Yeah, no, definitely. And because a lot of people through many different ways were hit many different ways, it just
it's tough for everyone. I think
it really, at the beginning of it, the first couple months, I was having a lot of problems myself, and then I decided to start doing this. I had been doing some form of this for years, but I decided to do this via Zoom because I started hearing about everybody doing things on this thing called Zoom. And I'm like, oh wow, there's like, because I was working from home for my day job, but I wasn't doing anything else. And I was just starting to get a little, batshit crazy. And then like, about a couple months ago, I kind of looked back and I'm like, you know what? I mean, it wasn't easy. I had some moments there, where things weren't looking good, but I came out of it. I didn't get sick. I was able to get my vaccines, and a lot of people weren't so lucky. I mean, you really have to be thankful for what you've got, quite honestly. And maybe that's one of the better things about this that happened, is that people realize how fortunate they actually are.
Yeah, it's like that song. I get that song stuck in my head all the time. The just be thankful for what you got.
I'm not sure which song that is.
William Devon. It's an old soul song.
Okay.
Anyway, what was I gonna say? That's like the gift of the obstacle. You know what I mean? Like when there's something put in front of you, you got to go over it or around it, or you got to think differently.
Yeah.
And operate differently. It interrupts your normal routine and habits.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it presents an opportunity, you know. I mean, it did. It sounds like it did for you. It did for me to a certain extent, you know.
Yeah.
That's like innovation, you know. If everything was perfect and seamless, you would never need to innovate or change or break out, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to discuss a little bit about you've got a background in punk rock, going to punk rock shows, and you were photographing things early on there. What was your kind of what era that you started in, if you don't mind getting into that a little bit? Like, what kind of bands were you going to see?
Well, I mean, so I always just loved music. I think I got into punk rock through skateboarding, you know, like the early, you know, Thrasher magazine. It used to be kind of like a newspaper that was printed on newsprint. But there were these compilations, the Thrasher compilations.
Okay.
I remember getting those when I was super young, you know, maybe like 11 or 12 or something. And I think that was probably my first introduction to punk rock or skate videos in general.
Right.
But you know, I liked all kinds of music. I liked a lot of like thrash metal and that early hip hop stuff, gangster rap. You know, I think all of it had a real, I don't know, it had a similar attitude, you know, that resonated with me. I think because what I was going through at the time. But later, you know, I didn't really identify as a punk or anything until I was living on the street, like living in squats, kind of, you know, practicing a sort of anarchy, you know, interpersonal, like mutual aid, mutual support. And sort of living off of a lot of the, you know, I was like eating out of the trash and you know, dumpster diving and panhandling and scraping by like that because, you know, no one really wanted to give me a job. Also, I wasn't legal, you know. I was technically, you know, no one was going to hire a 13, 14-year-old punk kid, you know, especially one that didn't have an address, didn't have a phone. Right. But I remember there were punk kids, right, that had mohawks and they had, you know, bondage pants and suspenders and the leather jackets. They had the look, you know, the fashion. I was like just Dickies, a button-up T-shirt, and a shaved head. I looked more like a skinhead or a fucking, you know, skater kid. You know, I didn't really look like a postcard punk. Right. And a lot of those kids I remember were like hostile to me, you know, at first, but then eventually became my friends, you know what I mean? And then someone basically told me like, oh, you're, you know, like you're punk or whatever. And I'm like, what? Me? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I mean, think about it, you know? And where the music came in, I didn't really, I guess the reason why I'm explaining it all like this is a lot of people get into a certain way of life through music. And I think I got into a way of life and then later realized there was music that talked about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the bands weren't that important. I remember bands being, you know, like Gigi Allen came to play in LA and there was a big riot. My friend Toogie went. He's like, it was amazing. And I was like, yeah, man, that sounds cool. But like you paid. I would rather spend that money on beer and drink in the alley. You know, I wasn't really hip to it. You know, I wasn't that sophisticated. You know, I liked the music. I liked Crass. I liked, you know, Misfits and Subhumans and, you know, all the LA 80s hardcore stuff, you know, Black Flag and Circle Jerks and Fear. I mean, I listened to all that kind of stuff. I remember seeing in like 1990 a lot of those bands playing at like the Hollywood Palladium, and but like I never paid to go to shows. Like, going to shows wasn't a big thing, for me in my life at that point in time.
Right, gotcha.
Later on, a lot of my friends started bands or were in bands, and I really had a good time showing up and watching them play. When I moved to New York at one point, was like hanging out mostly around the Lower East Side, and half my friends were in some kind of band or another. And we all had, stayed in squats, and there'd be shows in the basements of the squats. And like a lot of those shows and bands ended up becoming my favorite bands, And later I would go on tour with some of those bands just as like helping out, doing merch, selling T-shirts, kind of like a de facto tour manager, just, calling the club and being like, hey, all right, we're going to be there in 3 hours, or whatever, checking to make sure we had hotel reservations, just doing little shit to help out, because it was a great way to travel and just a fun experience to hang out with friends and go to shows every night. I did that with a few bands here and there, and now I can't even think of how many different shows I went to, because it's just like a thing where well, before the pandemic, I would go to every punk show that happened. If I didn't have to work. Problem is with New Orleans, most of the shows start so late here because it's a 24-hour city. Like, the bars never close, so sometimes shows don't even start till 1, 2 o'clock at night.
Right.
And if I'm working at 6 a.m, I'm not going to that show. I'm sorry, but if it's a Friday, Saturday night, I'm going. And before 5 years ago, before I started really working full time in film, I went to every show.
Right.
But not the ones at the big venues, but the ones that happen in the skate park, or like at the abandoned strip mall. The Generator show in the park, or the one under the bridge. Like, there's all these like backyard shows, and I love a backyard show. That's the shit.
Well, that's the great thing about New Orleans, is that a lot of that stuff happens far more often.
It happens in LA too. It happens in LA. The thing, LA is so big, and other cities I've lived, it happens, but you might not be tapped into it. Like I got a lot of friends that are like a little bit younger, and maybe like Mexican or Latino, like in LA, and they know all the fucking shows. They know like every backyard show, and they'll be like, yeah, this is happening in Alhambra, and this is out in Boyle Heights, and this is this and this, and I wouldn't know anything about it. It's like, I'm living, in Hollywood or something, and it's not happening there. It's not happening there. Here in New Orleans, it's like everyone knows each other. It's a smaller city. It's not so spread out. So if there's something going down, I'll probably get wind of it.
Yeah, for sure. Can I ask who were some of the bands you ended up working with in New York?
Well, I toured with my friends in this band called Leftover Crack.
Okay.
And then there was this, some of the members of that band had another band called Star Fucking Hipsters. I did music videos for that band too.
Yeah.
And then I toured for this with this folk punk band for a little while. That was another friend's band called Blackbird Rom.
Okay.
They had like a real moment, about 10 years ago. They were like, I don't know, they had some great shows. But it's basically like acoustic punk rock music with like banjos and shit. That was fun. There's I don't know. I had another friend has this band called Rats in the Wall. They went on tour with us.
Okay.
I got to tour with this band called Lynched, but they go by Lankum now. They're from Ireland. They're a folk band from Ireland. They were amazing.
Okay.
I wasn't really part of their it was all like kind of one big tour because there'd be like two or three bands, but they're all sharing the same like gear and vans. And they would play songs with each other. I don't know.
I was just curious because I mean, yeah.
None of them were big. It's not like
no, because I've written about I started all this by writing about music.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's like I was just curious if maybe we happen to know, you happen to work with some bands that I kind of either know members of now or interviewed, or I was just kind of curious because
I might have done music videos for some of them. I did like a couple dozen music videos for a while. That was kind of like my main hustle. I haven't really done one in a couple years, but I did.
I can't imagine they pay what they used to.
Well, I think that they can. If you're doing shit for like Lil Nas X, I'm sure you got paid great. Or if it's like a big pop group, you're getting paid.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's friends or friends of a friend and they're on an indie label, you're lucky if you're getting a few $100s a day. But or maybe you get a $5,000 budget if you're the producer and you have to like hire 10 people.
Right.
No one's really getting that much money, but they're often really fun. I did music videos for the Coup and the Brig and this metal band Dreaming Dead, hardcore band Destroyed in Seconds, Deadly Rain, a jazz group called Smoking Time Jazz Club, a couple of local punk bands here, Mea Culpa and Vile Bodies, Blackbird Rom, of course, Star Fucking Hipsters I did 2 videos for. I don't know, like it was kind of like I thought there was maybe a future in it. I thought like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this and eventually someone's going to be like, let's do this wild, big video, and here's a bunch of money to properly get paid. And I got close to it because I did something for a band that was on Epitaph, and they were like, oh, Epitaph, cool, and that was a good experience, but it's not like it really, didn't like blow open any doors for me. It's something that helps me get camera department jobs now, though, because it's like, oh, okay, cool. You've produced and directed.
No, for sure.
Your way around a camera. Like you can be our DP on this, commercial or something.
Yeah, that's cool. That definitely works. Any little bit helps, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah. And who knows where it's going to wind up in 10 years?
Yeah, for real. And and that of course ties into being part of social causes or protesting or being part of trying to advance society in a better way in whatever means you can. And the thing in your book where you make the point of saying like I'm going to screw this up. You mentioned it pretty early on about you didn't want it to just be wanted to be symbolism. You wanted it to, you want something to actually mean something and to actually, necessitate change in some way. And is that rooted? Is that something that's rooted in your whole life, or is that something you came to over the course of your life, where social justice or the need for social change in our society was important to you?
Oh yeah, well I think it's maybe inherent. I think everyone is, like kids are, little babies and kids are loving, naturally compassionate, and mostly kind. Sure that they can have tempers or but I think most of the ignorance and greed and hatred are sort of taught, by a system of rewards and punishment. But we reward greed and selfishness in this society, unfortunately. So people learn that, okay, if I need security or if I want love or if I want to have things, that I have to be kind of a cutthroat son of a bitch, And I think that at some point in my life, I probably picked up a lot of those lessons and then spent like half my life trying to unlearn them. You know, there was, when I was really young and, you know, maybe a teenager, I had, you know, I was an idealist. You know, I thought things should be a certain way. I was very attuned to a lot of injustice, and you know, I didn't know what to do with any of that stuff, and so I just, you know, got wasted, got loaded all the time, because, you know, it's painful carrying that around and caring and stuff like that, and so on a personal level, I went down kind of a dark road, and maybe became like kind of cold and calloused and harsh, and you know, definitely like had some dark times, and, you know, used my life's energy not necessarily to help people, but like just to look out for myself and screw you, you know, if you got in my way. And then you know, getting close to 20 years ago, I decided to change all that. Actually, like 17 years ago, I got sober.
Good for you.
Yeah, I had to go to rehab and shit. You know what I mean? I had to do
good.
I had to do the whole thing.
No, seriously, congratulations. There are people in my life that I've in my personal life that I've had to see struggle. So to hear somebody able to take care of their problem, I applaud you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think when I was early in sobriety, like I really just didn't know how to live. You know, it was like an ego death. You know, here I am, this person that lives to party, you know, to get loaded. Like, and now I don't have that. So who even am I? And I kind of went back to who I was when I was 13 and 14, and what I loved then was like, what I cared about then was, you know, a lot of social issues and creative work. You know, like drawing and making art and building things. That's what I was into when I was a kid. That's what I'm into now. So I had to kind of backtrack. But yeah, in recovery, you know, I encountered other communities and support systems, and I gained some tools. You know, I got better. And a big part of that is service and helping, which, you know, I think is really kind of like the punk rock thing to do. You know, if the status quo is to look out for yourself and me, you know, helping others it goes against that. It cuts across that. So,
right.
So I think service is really important, and caring about the pain and the suffering in the world is really important. But I don't have the answers, man, because like I'm just a guy who likes to take pictures. So if I don't show up at the protest, I'm not going to figure out what I can do to help, or if I can potentially contribute to something that is creating positive change, you know? So I just try to show up when I can, when it's possible, and find out. And that's like kind of the reason why, you know, apart from the fact that these communities are communities I belong to, and, you know, that makes it easier. It's kind of harder if you don't know people, and just to be like, wow, I care about this thing, you know, am I going to show up? And maybe it's going to be strange. Maybe it's going to be hostile. I don't know anyone there. And it's actually, it could be unsafe if you showed up to a protest, you don't know anyone. But I tend to have groups of friends that are going, and people that look out for each other and keep each other safe. So yeah, I like to show up for those things. And then, you know, there's an energy that isn't that different than going to see a really great show. You know, there's a collective energy that happens, you know, and a lot of it sure is adrenaline filled, and a lot of it is righteous, you know, right, indignation or even anger. There can be grief. There can be like the whole gamut of human emotions.
Sure.
But it can be a visceral experience, you know, and sometimes it's just a bunch of long-winded speeches. But
yeah, that's kind of what you mentioned in the book, is that, you know, there, you know, it's like, what, I don't know if you said 1 out of 10 or whatever, you know, is going to be the one where something's going to happen. And then the rest are just kind of like, you know, all right, we're all together and we're saying stuff, but you know, it's not going to be something that's going to end up on the 6 o'clock news, you know, necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, the things that end up on the news are usually just, sensational.
So bad.
Yeah. They want to discredit things, or, kind of. That's when it ends up on the news. But then, yeah, you could have 100 protests, and then they could all just be like super positive,
Right.
community building or empowering events where, people are just coming together and learning to organize, and that'll never make a single, newspaper or TV channel. But the second, like, someone gets pissed off and breaks a poor little Starbucks window, it'll be like front page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to admit that I myself, as somebody that's had very outspoken opinions on a lot of things, but I'm also a reserved person by nature. And while I do get angry about a lot of things, I also, for the longest time, I kind of fought with myself about the destruction aspect, especially when people, and it's particularly in minority areas where they destroy their surroundings, which, you know what I mean? I struggled with that for a long time, but and in having grown up on the far south, the far end of the south side of Chicago, basically where Chicago ends, I grew up right there. So I was, I was pretty close to, the South Side experience. I won't claim that I was of the South Side experience in terms of Chicago South Side being predominantly Black and Latino, but at least more than other people I knew, I at least understood some of the issues going on. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more familiar. And the thing is, you never stop learning. And I guess what I had struggled with was, the destruction of property. I never understood what that did, but I also, it kind of slowly crept up on me about the idea that basically it's just people bottle it up and they're not allowed to do anything about it, and they're taken advantage of for so long that even though it doesn't make sense, and I've certainly done enough things in my life that didn't make sense, and I've done them out of anger, frustration, or sadness, that these things happen. And it doesn't mean everybody's like that. And of course, people in those communities also are incredulous to the idea of destroying their, things that they live near. But, as an adult, as someone that's still trying to learn, you try to understand why things happen for, the way they do. And I don't think anything's crystallized people's minds more than the last 4 or so years, because really whatever wounds were kind of barely healed, if starting to heal in our minds, I guess, because everybody thought we were, on a better path. They were ripped wide open when Trump became president. And we realized that there was a nasty, ugly underside waiting to come out with the right person. And just thank God he was as stupid and ignorant and unable to do the things that somebody in his power could have done. It's only by luck, quite frankly. You would have had anybody in there that was smarter than him, we'd be a dictatorship right now.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. It's definitely scary. I think that, there's a lot happening and a lot of different reactions. And I tend to think of property damage as sort of like the natural outcome of oppression. You know what I mean?
Right.
Also, like, I don't really, I care about people and I care about living creatures and stuff. Like, there's kind of a hierarchy of my caring about things.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
When it comes to inanimate objects, I care significantly less about them. Right. But I understand people seeing property destruction and getting scared. That's a reaction I understand. I don't feel that way. I don't feel scared when I see an overturned cop car or I see
Right.
like a trash can set on fire or whatever. It's always, even if they burn down a Starbucks or something, I don't see people burning down their own neighborhoods. I don't think the people own those things that they're attacked. It's symbolic. You know what I mean?
No, that's exactly what my point was. It took some time to kind of get that idea, but I think that's also something that I think the last 4 years has taught us, and why so many places make sure that during heightened times, they make sure that people understand which is a black-owned, or minority-owned business, so that somebody doesn't get crazy and do destruction to the people in their own community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately it's hard to control that once
exactly
momentum builds, and I mean the same thing happens. When a college football team wins a championship, they start,
which I always found stupid. Yeah.
But no one really cries out in fear about that, or no one really makes much of a deal. They flipped over a car. Like, hopefully that car is insured. We don't know the story beyond. Here's a bunch of people waving the banners of their football team on top of the car. So property destruction, I mean, really divorced from the context of anything with political meaning, no one cares about. No one really loses any sleep about it. But when the media that might have a specific agenda plays it on a loop, along with the narrative that says, like, maybe you should be afraid of this thing happening for no good reason, but like maybe instead of supporting this group, you should fear them.
Right.
Then like, there's a lot of reactionaries that respond to that. On the other hand, I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because the whole paradigm has shifted, like, or the zeitgeist of I don't know if that's the right word, but like you think about protests and mass movements and property destruction, and then since January 6th happened and all the Trumpers did their version of uprising,
right?
Like, now there are a lot of people that are like, granted, they're probably liberals that were half-heartedly showing up to protest anyways, but they're not showing up to the demonstrations like they used to. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't see the pink pussy hats like coming out in the numbers. I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but I feel like there's a sort of I don't know. Things have shifted since at the beginning of this year, where a lot of people are placated by the fact that there's a Democrat, an apparent liberal in the office, and he's not trolling people on Twitter. But I'm like, in my opinion, he's what he represents is dangerous as well, and you have to be vigilant. You still have to show up.
I get that,
but
yeah,
I'm not trying to.
No.
I definitely am no fan of Trump, and I'm glad that I don't have to hear about him as much.
Right.
But I worry that, like, at least under Trump, people knew, this is a dangerous thing that we need to, respond against. And now, I'm like, it's complicated. So.
Well, here's I'm going to try it. I'll be as simple with how I view it as possible. Number one, for 4 years, we didn't know what could possibly happen. Literally, anything could have. If he ever got any sense, or got people together, or the people around him got together well enough to figure out how to seriously do damage, nobody knew what could happen. We had to always be vigilant. You know what I'm saying? And we all did. Like, I think a majority of Americans felt that the country as we knew it, as inadequate as it actually is before him, and now even, we were all in serious danger, potentially,
Yeah.
And do I agree with you that people have kind of slacked since? Of course, because there's a certain sense of Number one, we just went through 4 years of this, of fighting every day, every year, being bombarded with every moronic and scary thing possible. And on top of it, we just went through a pandemic, and I think everybody is flat out exhausted. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying, look, I don't tend to trust most politicians. Do I think President Biden is a good man at heart? I think he's a good man at heart, but he's also the leader of the free world in a sense, and that comes with it compromise. No matter what he wants, no matter who he is as a person, he still has to compromise to make the train keep rolling. And I agree with you. I think we still need to pay attention. There are some things that have happened that I would say, I'd say like the biggest, it has nothing to do with Biden, but like for me, an example would be somebody like Cuomo in New York. I personally think Andrew Cuomo, if he were a Republican, would have been forced out by now. I don't understand how Democrats haven't forced him out. You know what I'm getting at? It's like, I don't think that man has any legs to stand on to still be governor. And I think it's insulting, and it doesn't make one side look any better than the other when they're defiant like that. It doesn't make any sense. So the Democratic Party, and besides also having the problem with they're also very weak in actually getting anything done most of the time, which is another problem. There are a lot of good progressives out there that want to move things forward, and that's what we need, something bold to get everybody, into a better position in life. We need to start taking care of people better, and we're not going in any direction towards that. And it's gonna get lost, I think, soon too.
Yeah, I don't really invest too much into electoral politics, and I think that the whole Republican Democrat thing is kind of like I don't know, sort of an illusion. You know what I mean? It's
I get that. I totally get that.
But I do agree with you that, after 4 years of hypervigilance, people are exhausted, and they're also relieved that like this person who's, basically an abuser who's been traumatizing people is out of the room, so to speak.
Right.
I feel relieved about that. But like, as far as the discourse goes on all these issues, you're right. We need to talk about, we're talking about this. We need to talk about this, and I hope that the conversation can move a little bit more towards, justice and human rights and sort of like, in a very practical sense, making things so there's a little less suffering. I don't have the most faith that it will happen. What I'm concerned about, what I was just talking about, is like after this point, after all this last 4 years, right now it kind of feels like people have their guard down. So like the potential for like really dangerous shit to happen without us even being aware of it is a lot greater than it is when everyone's like, this person's bad, let's resist against, you know what I mean? Because it's anyways, but I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer or whatever.
No, I completely understand what you're saying. It makes sense. I think you're somebody that has a very strong point of view and a very strong sense of right and wrong, and I think that we would like to see the same fight continue to force people to make the changes that we desperately need.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the concept of the Overton window?
No.
That's something that's like kind of talked about in regards to politics. So like there's, picture a window and everything in there is kind of what we're talking about. And then someone on the right goes like, all right, let's privatize everything and, like totally have
unregulated
utopia, you know what I mean? And then everything, the window moves to the right. And then it's like things like socialized, medicine or whatever is left out of the conversation. it was once center of the conversation. Now it's so far left. So really, like it does take a pretty extreme, movement to the left, even just to recenter it, because
Right.
like you want to start talking about things like socialized medicine or higher living wages or rent control even.
Right.
Those things that are sort of in the middle that didn't even used to be that controversial. You're
Right.
probably going to have to talk about, dismantling the government and abolishing the prison industrial complex, even to have those conversations about socialized medical care. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's how you're going to have to move that's how, in my opinion, how we would have to even just move the conversation. Right now, no one's even talking about that stuff. Even our so-called progressives, they're all trying to play ball and they're all trying to compromise and make deals and be a part of, they want to be team players and shit like that. They're not really pushing hard,
Yeah.
And so I don't really look to them for change. We're not, the people that can push the hard are mass movements. So,
yeah,
that's why I think people have to come together and organize, totally outside of the government. Right. And if you want the government to do anything, you're gonna have to put so much pressure on them, and then they'll respond. Right. But like, okay, Derek Chauvin, got convicted for murder because he murdered someone in front of everyone. Right. But like, think about it. We had to protest for a year worldwide. Right. Like all these people like had to like invest all their life's energy into doing something that just should be a given. But what should really be a given is that they can't just wantonly murder people of color or anyone. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. Like, having a knife is not a reason to get murdered. Like, even having a gun is not a reason to get murdered by cops. I'm sorry. But like, the amount of pressure it took just to have something that is supposed to just happen naturally, to me, shows how much more pressure we would have to put to really get significant change. And that's why I'm worried about like people being exhausted. I get it. And maybe having their guard down because like, their abuser just left the room. But I also think that maybe now would be a really good time for people to come together and organize that. And I think a lot of people are.
I think people are more. I think one thing that's happened is at the very least people are more involved. At least they're more aware of things now. I would hope that we could still kind of muster the energy. I'm sorry if I'm starting to go dark here. I forgot to turn on a light before I started this. It's getting
dark. Got a vibe, man. It's cool. It's cool.
I just noticed how dark I look in my own camera. But the thing is like what's bizarre about our current situation is that there are so many people that agree. People that say that they're Republicans widely don't make enough money either. They widely owe a lot of money for medical things. They pay too much for medication. They're not getting their jobs are crap. But for some reason, because the Republicans like to sow the basis of race and guns with their group, they're keeping them on because of those things over what these people need. Yeah. They don't really need guns. They don't really need to be worried about other races. They need jobs. They need their health care taken care of. They need a nice place to stay. They need their kids to go to a school where they're actually taught something. And we've gotten so far away from basics. And it's because of lobbying and things like that, where the powerful have the money to lobby. I don't know why we don't have a unpowerful lobby to just pitch in money to start having somebody lobby to Congress on the Americans' behalf. But it's obvious sending delegations to Washington no longer works. We need our own lobbying effort. And as much as I do agree with you that protesting and all that it works, I think at this point the only way to beat them is to join them and beat them at their own game, because I don't know how else to get around to these people, because they're not listening to us. There's 99% of us that probably can all agree on 10 basic things that we need that they will not provide for us. We can't even agree on infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, there are like some fundamental disagreements about what the function of government is and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, I think what you're talking about is a sort of reformist approach to government, which I understand. I think that like that's an approach where it's like, you know, work with the system and try and change, you know, things over time by you know. I kind of think that the way the system's set up, you know, it's like a casino.
The house is going to win.
Right. So like, I'm like, I don't want to go. I'm not going to gamble. You know, right. I'm not going to go play that game.
Right. That makes sense.
So, but you know, I'm also like, some of my friends are way more hardline. They're like, you know, settle for nothing less than, you know, the complete dismantling, you know, the complete abolition of government. And I don't see that as being very likely personally. I'd like to be more optimistic about that. But like, I've been in jail a bunch over my lifetime, you know, gotten arrested for all kinds of stupid shit. And, you know, sometimes you wind up in front of a judge who's just a honorary prick, and he's going to give you as much time as possible. Right. Now, you could elect a more sympathetic judge who will give you probation. In a very real, you know, quantifiable way, you'll have improved a lot of lives, right? And you can do that through voting. So in your local election, if your judges are elected.
Right.
And there are things like that, like with district attorneys or with your mayor or whatever, you know, like your congressman, your city council, all this kind of shit, where I think like voting actually has a more real-time effect on the quality of lives of the population, the citizenry, right? And, you know, we elected a DA here in New Orleans who's a little bit more left-leaning than the guy before him. But, you know, he's still kind of in the business of getting, prosecutions and all this kind of shit.
Of course.
He's not taking people to jail for weed. He's not prosecuting those cases. And, like, that's a good thing, man. And that's something that came out of voting, right?
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, cool. Let's like fucking live in an anarchist utopia with no government. But in the meantime, we live in reality, and let's elect the guy that's not going to give everyone mandatory minimum sentences. You know?
Right.
So like, I don't know if that applies to the top echelon politicians as much. Yeah. I kind of feel like the higher up they are in politics, the less you know, people like you or me really can influence them or make, you know, like our vote, there's just so much money, you know what I mean? We're not competing in that game. You know, we can't, the buy-in is too big to go back to the.
But I see your point. I see your point now. You're kind of more talking on a local state level where that probably you're right. That probably does have even more of an impact than just a talking point for the national level. You're right. A lot of times civic unrest will have far more effect on local and state politics or county or, you know, whatever. What do you have down there?
Parishes,
right. Yeah. Couldn't think of the word for a second. I love New Orleans, but I'm actually coming down there next month.
People from Chicago love New Orleans. It's a fact.
I went there 12 years ago, and I felt like I was home. I've lived here my whole life. So
you know, there's a lot of similarities, I think, between the two cities as far as like the food and culture, and you know.
It's a lot cool. It's a lot cooler down there, except your summers are worse.
Yeah, we got the hot summers. You got the cold ass winters.
Well, we honestly don't get the bad winters anymore thanks to global warming for the most.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's not as bad as when I was a kid, at least. Yeah. Where it snowed in November and it didn't go away until April. Yeah. You know, so, But no, I think it's a fair point. You've kind of like you made me think about that more, and I think that's a pretty apt point. How do you feel things are going right now in New Orleans? I know there's been like here, there's been a lot. The murder rate's gone up, the carjacking rate has gone up. How are the police handling that? I know that just like here, the area's had a couple of police shooting deaths fairly recently that have made the news. So if I'm hearing about them, I'm sure they're a big deal down there. How has like the reopening, I guess, after the past year been going in your eyes?
Well, I'll say a couple of positive things about New Orleans is they've done really well to get out the vaccine. You know, I think that we have a pretty, high percentage of people in Orleans Parish that have gotten the vaccine. Yeah. And they've just gotten rid of the mask mandate in certain public places. Like, I think you still need it if you're going to go into like a government building or a hospital or something, or, but, you can go out now. Places are back, open up. And it's really kind of gone from 0 to 60 overnight. Like, all the bars are packed. People are in the streets. That shit frightens me a little bit, but I like that everyone is taking, for the most part, taking the vaccine seriously, taking COVID seriously. I will say that, like, I don't think drinking and safety are really natural bedfellows. And drinking and partying is such a big part of the, like, commerce and the, tourism that, there's no way to really make that stuff safe. You can't do that in social distance, whatever. So there's going to be problems there. But I think people are doing the best they can. Crime's gone up here. Violence has gone up here. Like, you can't have kids out of school for a year. They're just all going mad with boredom. And like my neighborhood, like, they run around in packs of, 6 to 10 and they fuck with you. You know what I mean? Like, they're definitely bored and trying to push limits and, like, trying to see what they can get away with, same way I did when I was a kid. And, I don't have a solution to that other than, like, your kids need programs, need to be in school. Yeah. Your parents need to, like, be able to make a living wage without working 3 friggin' jobs.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, so those are all problems that were around before the pandemic that were maybe, exacerbated by the circumstances of the pandemic. And so now that things are starting to change a little bit, I'm hoping those get better. I mean, as far as the police are going to do police shit. You know what I mean? Like, we got the Louisiana State Police shot some dude on the side of the road not that long ago, and the dash cam footage just came out. You know what I mean? And it's like they tried to tell his family that he got in a traffic accident and died. And then
that's right. This is a story I was thinking about.
Yeah, and then the footage just came out, and it's like, no, they beat him to death. They tased his ass, and then he had a heart attack, and they didn't give him medical treatment, and he died. You know what I mean? Like, for nothing.
Right.
He had his hands up in the car, like he had fully surrendered. There's no reason for that shit to happen. Yeah. And so, I don't look to the police for solutions, but I believe in restorative justice, and I think that, like, really community organizing, I think, is the better answer to this. Like, there should be youth outreach. Doesn't have to come from the police. And I think when people are having mental health crisis, someone should respond other than police. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
When someone's overdosed, someone should respond other than police. When someone's had their house broken into, someone should respond other than the police. The crime's already happened. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need you need, like, an investigator. You don't need a cop with a badge and a gun. You know what I mean? You need someone to fucking look for fingerprints. Like, anyways, so little of police work is actually doing any of that shit. You know what I mean? It's like of actually solving crimes and stuff like that. Like for the most part, it's like traffic stops, jamming people up, giving you fines. It's not actual violent crime or any of that stuff. So we could, I think, okay, we could use that money and create some kind of, like, other solutions to those problems that would probably be more effective. But Will that happen? I don't know. Like that.
There's so much.
I'm optimistic. But
yeah, there's so much that needs to be done. I think with the police, I think the necessary thing is I don't have I have a problem with the system itself. I don't have a problem with all cops myself personally. I'm just saying that for myself. No, I'm just saying that because what I'm getting at is I'm not saying that your opinion was other or anything. I'm just saying that.
Oh, yeah. I'll say some ACAB, but it's like that person quits that job, and like I got no problem with them. That's just a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I mean, I'll talk about their job.
Yeah. I just think that there's so much that can be done to change the way policing goes about. I think number one, you have to have longer and better training. You have to have psychology training, I think, is another thing. I think also psychology examinations on who you're bringing in. And you also have to pay people better, too, because the problem is the crime started getting heavier, and people said the people that were equipped to do the job to some degree said, well, I can't, I'm not doing this crap. And then they got a bunch of hotheads that said, okay, I'll bash people's heads in. I don't care. Like they're just, looking for a thrill, the types that would sign up to go to war for no apparent reason. They just want to see some action. And when you're left with that, and then there's no accountability and, all of that, then there's just, it screws up the entire, the entire area for everybody. And this is happening all over the place. The other thing we need is we just need people to just take care of people things, not the police. You're right. The police don't need to do everything with regards to if it's a mental health issue, send in a counselor. Now, if it's a mental health issue and somebody's got a gun, I mean, maybe have a couple people like there as backup, but they shouldn't be they shouldn't be the first person to intercede in the thing. They should have somebody to talk to first. And there's just, but the thing is, like everything, we've allowed the government to take away resources from things people need to give it to people that already have everything. And that's a big problem. And you can't even begin to touch on how much of our country has been given away to the wealthy and the powerful.
Yeah, even just in the past year. Yeah. They increased their wealth exponentially during the pandemic. They profited off the, catastrophe and the crisis and the suffering of others. Yeah. And we get this shit on the stick. I think it's the same, same thing that bums me and you out is the same thing that's bumming out Republicans in rural areas. At some point we're going to have to all get together and figure it out, work together. But like I said earlier, like I don't have the solutions, I just keep showing up and supporting my community when I get the opportunity to. But like I worry about, so the logic that you just laid out. So I worry about the effects of some of that reasoning. If people go like, okay, we need to reform the police department. We need more money, more training. We have to do these things, accountability boards and stuff like that. So what that ends up usually creating is larger police budgets and not any change in behavior, because we had that. Everyone got the cameras, the cameras and stuff that became like a thing. Yeah. A lot of different municipalities and stuff like that had oversight commissions and things like that, but we didn't really see a substantial drop off in police violence. We have started to track it though.
Yeah.
But like you kind of touched upon it. Really, I think you use those resources before the crime ever happens, and the way you do that is you create more of a fabric and a safety net for society to catch people and support people. You have better education, you have better health care, you have affordable housing, stuff like that. People don't want to be out there, robbing and killing. So
right. No, and I think if you invest it in people, you get people working making, more money.
Yeah.
More money goes into the system. I mean, I don't understand. I've never understood how this is not an easy thing to figure out. But what it comes down to is that the wealthiest out there, the most powerful out there, are rigging it so that we just sit there, feeding off of the scraps, basically. And you're right. The Republican people on a certain side, I've thought this for years. We're all in the same kind of boat, but we're being divided by certain things that don't affect our lives. In their case, race. In their case, whatever nonsense it is. The Second Amendment.
My mom is convinced that a Mexican person or some Central American person is going to sneak across the border, somehow break into her little apartment in Burbank and kill her in her sleep. And I'm like, Mom, where do you get that shit? Like, I wanna sue Fox News,
right,
for making my elderly mom afraid of some shit that is never gonna happen. Just right. Maybe that happened one time somewhere, some similar thing like that. Someone, got attacked and it ended up being like someone that was in the country illegally. Fucking A, man. That doesn't mean that that's a real threat, and my mom shouldn't have to be scared. And right. But yeah, they know their business, divide and conquer. You know what I mean? It's tribalism. It's the same thing. You go to any small town in America, man, and what they got is they got the church and they got their football team, and maybe they got a bowling alley, but they don't have a lot. You know what I mean? They got the community is real close knit.
Yeah.
But the church and the football team is their community, man. Those are their colors. Those are their people. Those are the people that they care about. There's nothing wrong with that. But it also teaches you that other team is garbage and you need to beat them and defeat them. And that's the only way, rah, rah, rah. And then you get
that's what's taken over our nation.
Yeah. Yeah, and Democrats are just as guilty as that. I'm just like, this game is stupid.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I think we've had a really good discussion, actually.
Talk about politics shit.
No, I mean, but it all ties in. It all ties into what you're getting at with your book. And what's the book is Revel Revolt. It's out on what's the publisher?
Burn Barrel Press and Defend New Orleans. It's co-published. Yeah.
Okay, and it's on your website. It's Beau Patrick Coulon.
I need to put it on my website. It's not on my website.
It's not on your website.
Find it on burnbarrelpress.com or through New Orleans. I think.
Well, I'll have links. I'll have links as well up for where to buy it. And buy it, and you can't get it on Amazon anyway, so you got to go through the actual publisher to buy. That means more money for you and them, I guess.
It's definitely more, a bigger slice of the pie for us, but we'll have it in more bookstores, and I don't know if I'll ever put it on Amazon, but it'll be hopefully in your local bookstore at some point. Yeah. And but right now, you can get it online.
You can get it safely online, just delivered to your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't have to support a corporate monolith to do it either.
Win-win.
How's the book? How's the book's been received so far?
It's gone really well. Yeah, it's been received well locally. It's been received well in the press. Gotten a number of features and some good reviews. And it's just sort of steadily getting out there, which is great. Yeah. It's very much a local focused project, but I think it's something that, everyone can relate to, because the same thing's happening in every city,
Right.
But if you want to know, what the protests and the punk scene and the, Mardi Gras scene in New Orleans looks like, it's a nice little time capsule of the last 6-7 years.
Yeah, one of my favorite photos is you managed to get a group of the Mardi Gras Indians in there. And I tell you, that's a dream of mine to be able to come down for Mardi Gras and to see some Indians. I was just talking to Ivan Neville about the same thing.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I've been doing more New Orleans focused stuff lately. I talked to John Boutte.
Okay. All right. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get, because New Orleans is.
You got me up there with John Boutte and Ivan Neville. All right.
There you go. Yeah. Well, it also coincided with me coming down there. So sometimes I get narrow focused and start thinking about how can I focus stuff on what I'm into at the exact moment. But it kind of worked out because, Ivan, for years, I mean, I had been a fan of his since I was in high school. So it was really a huge kick to talk to him. I do want to end with two simple questions, although where you live, they may be problematic for your answer. Okay. Where do you get the best po' boy and where do you get the best gumbo?
Shit, man. Where do you get the best po' boy?
For you, what is your favorite?
Man, I just go to Hank's. If I want a po' boy down the street, it's just a no frills, little market down St. Claude, and I'll get like a shrimp po' boy there sometimes. But they're like everywhere. You're talking about like basically the gas station has gumbo.
No, I get that. I'm saying where's your favorite? Where's your favorite?
My favorite gumbo? Man,
I don't even care if it's at the gas station.
Yeah, I go to Hank's for a po' boy. If I had a hankering for a po' boy, I'd probably just go to Hank's. For gumbo, man, I had a good cup of gumbo at the River Shack not that long ago, but I like chicken and sausage gumbo more than the seafood gumbo, and there's a sort of, that could be a controversial subject in itself.
No, I get it.
So I do like seafood sometimes, but man, it's hard. It's hard not to get good gumbo down here. It's possible.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it's possible.
If you come through, we can get some beignets and cafe au laits or something. I'm more into the sweets.
You are? Yeah, I'm the same guy. Dumont, I went to at least 2 or 3 times when I was down there.
Yeah, it's a must go. Well,
what neighborhood are you in?
Morning call too. I'm in the Holy Cross neighborhood.
Holy Cross, okay.
The lower 9th ward. Yeah.
Lower 9th, okay.
By the river. I'm about a block from the river.
How's the lower 9th doing?
It's doing pretty good, man. I mean, they just repaved St. Claude, and that's like a miracle. I don't know when they'll get to my street, but there's like slow improvements here and there. We've been having really severe storm seasons.
Yeah.
Each year seems to get worse and worse, and we've been really lucky that it hasn't hit us too badly. We had one really small storm last year that kind of passed over us directly and messed up a lot of stuff, but the lower 9th ward wasn't hit too hard. So, well,
it took a long time for the lower 9th to even remotely bounce back because it got hit the worst during Katrina.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the storm. I left in 2002 and came back, started coming back around 2007. So I was kind of gone for that era.
Yeah.
And I lived in the upper 9th ward, and now I live in the lower 9th ward just because I kind of got priced out of the upper 9th ward. Everyone's kind of getting pushed a little bit further away from the center just because, rising rents and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the lower 9th got hit especially hard during Katrina, and it was decimated. So, if there were 10 houses on a block, 9 of them are gone,
Yeah.
And so you still today, you'll drive past some neighborhoods and you're like, why aren't there houses here? It's all green and it's, there'll just be like one house on a block, and there's still a good chunk of the lower Ninth Ward, especially closer to the lake. I'm closer to the river, but closer to the lake and Bayou Bienvenue. It's like, you're living in the country because all the houses are gone.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was in one of the Spike Lee documentary, if it was on For May, the show, but there was a shot of a guy mowing his lawn, and his was like the only house. He was the only one living on the block. Yeah. And that's always stuck with me.
Yeah, that's a striking image. I think I saw that documentary a while ago, but yeah.
That's a hard one to watch.
There is a lot of rebuilding that's happened, a lot of new construction and
well, thank God.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because like with development, it's like, who do they have in mind?
Right.
It isn't always the local population that they have in mind. Sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes they're building for new people, for new, more affordable, upwardly mobile people, and it's hard to get developers or builders involved or interested in. I assume it's hard. I'm not trying to, but I know other,
No, I hear you.
Grocery store, they'll build a new bougie food court before they'll build a grocery store. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like, but we all want to go to the grocery store. We don't really need, a juice stand. But thanks.
Right. Well, I know that even something like, I know Brad Pitt's had a company that got embroiled in some bad stuff because the people that were actually running it, not necessarily Brad himself, was the problem, but the person that was actually handling all of it wasn't doing stuff up to code. And it's like, even when people are legitimately trying to help, there's still somebody that's going to try and screw people over somehow. And it's like,
yeah,
people can't catch a break.
Yeah. I don't know. I try not to get too cynical, and I don't know if that person was out there to do villainous shit or if like they were just like using the opportunity to do something new. And they built all these like funky, like interesting architecture houses rather than just spending that money building houses that looked like the houses that were missing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so a lot of the materials they used weren't really practical for the environment, and they didn't hold up the test of time.
Yeah.
Like you said. So it's been in the news, and it's been in courts, and they've had to tear down several of those buildings that aren't.
And that's a damn shame.
Yeah, it's. I wish it was not so common.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. If there's one thing New Orleans and Chicago share, it's extreme sense of graft and troubling double dealings in politics. We are desperately linked in that manner for sure, because we are both excessively screwed by the people that run our cities.
Yeah. Yeah, that is you were speaking facts.
Well, I'll leave it at that because I'm increasingly disappearing here.
Okay, all right. Well, don't fade away entirely.
But I appreciate you taking the time, Beau. It's been a real honor talking to you. I love the book. Revel and Revolt is out now. You could go to, when you view this, you can go on the YouTube page or on Spotify or Apple, wherever. It'll have links there to go buy the book. Buy one for your family, your friends. Buy one for the whole neighborhood. Turn Beau into an overnight sensation. And maybe get them into an even bigger pad or something. I don't know. I don't know what you do with all that extra money if everybody bought your book, but buy something nice for the wife at least. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm sorry.
No, those are all good questions. I'd probably just buy more film or stupid camera stuff because I have a problem. But
oh, absolutely. If you have an obsession, that's where most of the money goes, right?
But my wife Jordan does deserve nice stuff too. So
well, there you go. Buy a few hundred books so she can get something nice.
There you go. Buy a few hundred books. That sounds great. Thanks for having me on here, Brett.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll take you up on that offer. I'll let you know when I'm down.
All right. Thank you, man.
All right, man. Take care. You have a good one.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.